Hello and welcome. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine stone walls so thick that the very weight of centuries seems pressed into their mortar. Picture towers rising against coastal winds, their battlements crowned with scholars rather than soldiers. This is Candlekeep, the great library fortress on the Sword Coast. And this is where your story begins. You are not simply a visitor to this place. You are its child, raised within these walls, nurtured by knowledge and protected by isolation. The other residents call you Gorion's ward, and that name carries with it both comfort and mystery. You do not remember the time before Candlekeep. Your earliest memories are of book-lined corridors, of patient tutors, of practice yards where you learned to swing a sword or weave a spell depending on your talents. You remember Gorion, your foster father, the mage who raised you with firm kindness and careful instruction. Candlekeep sits on a rocky promontory overlooking the Sea of Swords, south of the great city that will one day define your fate, Baldur's Gate itself. The fortress serves a singular purpose in the realms. It is a repository of knowledge, a place where books and scrolls and tomes are collected, preserved, and studied. Entry to Candlekeep requires a steep price, a book not already in the collection, a volume rare enough to justify admission. This requirement keeps the population small and selective. Monks, scribes, and scholars make up most of the residents, along with the avowed who maintain the library and protect its treasures. For you, this place has been your entire world. You have grown from infant to young adult within these walls, watching the same faces, walking the same paths, studying the same texts that have educated generations before you. There is security in this routine, comfort in the predictability. The monks know you. The scholars nod as you pass. Imone, your closest friend and fellow orphan, shares your lessons and your mischief. She is bright and quick, with a talent for finding trouble and slipping out of it with equal ease. Together, you have explored every corner of Candlekeep that the rules allow, and perhaps a few that they do not. But lately, something has changed. You feel it in the way Gorion watches you, with an expression you cannot quite read. Concern, perhaps, or fear. The mage has always been protective, but now his protection feels urgent, almost desperate. He speaks to you of being careful, of staying close, of not wandering beyond sight of the walls. When you ask why, his answers are vague, unsatisfying. There are dangers in the world, he tells you. There are those who would do you harm, but he will not explain who these enemies are or why they would seek you out. The Sword Coast itself has grown troubled. News filters into Candlekeep through visitors and merchants. Tales of an iron crisis spreading across the region. Metal has begun to fail. Swords shatter in their scabbards. Armor crumbles at a touch. Plows break in the fields, and tools prove worthless in craftsmen's hands. No one understands the cause. Some whisper of sabotage, others of curse or plague. The shortage drives prices higher. Trade becomes difficult. Tensions mount between Baldur's Gate to the north and Am to the south. bandits take advantage of the chaos. The roads become dangerous. Caravans go missing or arrive with tales of attacks. The Flaming Fist, Baldur's Gate's mercenary army and city guard, struggles to maintain order across such a vast territory. The city itself eventually closes its gates to outsiders, allowing entry only to citizens and those with official business. This isolation breeds paranoia. Everyone suspects everyone. In such an environment, trust becomes a rare commodity. You are not immune to these rumors, but they feel distant, muffled by Candlekeep's walls. The troubles of the outside world have always been stories to you, lessons in history or politics rather than immediate threats. Your concerns are more immediate and more familiar. Your training, your studies, your friendships, the small dramas of fortress life. Whether you will master that difficult cantrip or perfect your swordsmanship, whether Amon will convince you to sneak into the forbidden sections of the library one more time. Then comes the day when everything changes. Gorion finds you in the late afternoon. His face is grave, his manner urgent. He tells you to gather your belongings, to prepare for a journey. You will leave Candlekeep tonight as soon as darkness falls. He offers no explanation despite your questions. There is no time, he says. You must trust him. You must be ready. The way he speaks is different than usual. This is not a request. This is necessity. You scramble to comply, confusion warring with excitement. You have never left Candlekeep. The prospect fills you with equal parts anticipation and fear. Where are you going? Why the secrecy? Why the rush? Gorion will not answer. He moves through his own preparations with swift efficiency, gathering supplies and checking equipment. You see him take up his staff, see him ready components for spells. Whatever awaits you beyond the walls, he expects danger. Amon finds you as you pack. She sees your preparations and understands immediately that something significant is happening. When you explain as much as you can with your own limited knowledge, she makes a decision. She will follow you. You try to dissuade her. This is not her concern, not her journey. But Amon is stubborn. You are her only real family. Where you go, she goes. You cannot stop her, and part of you does not want to. The thought of leaving alone, of facing the unknown without a friend, is more frightening than you want to admit. Night falls over Candlekeep. The fortress settles into its evening rhythm. Monks retiring to cells, scholars to their studies. The library towers glow with lamplight. Guards walk their rounds on the walls. Everything appears normal, peaceful, but you feel the tension in your chest, the awareness that something momentous is about to occur. Gorion comes for you. Together, the two of you walk toward the main gate. The guards recognize Gorion and step aside. The massive doors open, and you pass through them for the first time in your memory. The world beyond is dark, lit only by stars and a thin crescent moon. The road stretches away into shadow, leading toward the coastway, the main trade route that runs north to Baldur's Gate and south to Am. You walk in silence. Gorion sets a brisk pace, his eyes constantly scanning the darkness. You try to match his vigilance, but you do not know what to look for. Every shadow seems threatening. Every sound makes you start. The night is full of small noises, wind in grass, distant animal calls, the scuff of your own footsteps. Your hand rests on your weapon, ready but uncertain. Then you see them. Figures ahead on the road, blocking the path, armored forms emerging from the darkness. There are several of them, warriors by their stance and equipment. They stand with the confidence of those who expect victory. In their center is an imposing armored figure, hard to see clearly in the night. The shape is massive, and even at a distance, there is a sense of power and menace that makes the air feel heavy. Gorion stops. His hand moves in a gesture that means stay back, stay behind me. You obey, fear turning your mouth dry. The armored figure steps forward, though in the darkness and chaos, you cannot make out details clearly. A voice emerges, deep and commanding, cutting through the night. Gorion is ordered to hand you over, to surrender his ward. The words make it clear this is no random ambush. They came for you specifically. If Gorion resists, it will cost him his life. Gorion refuses. Of course he refuses. You are his ward, his child in all the ways that matter. He raised you, taught you, protected you. He would never simply give you away to armed strangers on a dark road. His own voice is steady as he responds, steady, but filled with resolve. He tells you to run, to flee, to get away while he holds them here. You hesitate. You cannot simply abandon Gorion. But he shouts the command again, desperate now, and his desperation spurs you to motion. You run. You leave the road, plunging into the darkness alongside it. Behind you, you hear the sounds of combat. Spells detonating. The clash of weapons. Gorion's voice raised in incantations. The night lights up with magical fire as he unleashes powerful spells against his attackers. You do not look back. You cannot. You run until your lungs burn, until your legs shake, until you collapse in the grass far from the road. Only then do you turn. Only then do you see the distant glow fading. Only then does the terrible understanding sink in. Gorion is not coming. You wait through the long hours of darkness, hoping to see his figure approaching, hoping to hear his voice calling you back. But the night remains silent. Dawn comes eventually, gray and cold. You force yourself to return to the road, to retrace your steps. You find him there in the morning light. Gorion lies dead on the stones, his body broken by the battle. His killers are gone. You are alone. The grief is overwhelming, crushing. But beneath it is something else. Questions that demand answers. Who were those warriors? Why did they want you? What could possibly make you valuable enough to kill for? Gorion gave his life to protect you, and you do not even understand why. A voice calls your name. You spin, weapon drawn, expecting another attack. But it is Imone. She followed you from Candlekeep, just as she promised. She stayed far enough back to avoid notice, but she was there. She heard enough to know that Gorion died defending you, and that you are now alone in a hostile world. She hurries forward, her face pale with shock. She looks at Gorion's body, at your grief-stricken face, and makes the only decision she can. She will stay with you. You will face this together. You search Gorion's body with trembling hands, hating the necessity, but knowing there may be clues. You find some coins, some supplies, and a letter, sealed and addressed to friends you have never met. Khalid and Jaira, the letter names them, harpers who can be found at the Friendly Arm Inn. They will help you. They can be trusted. This could imply that Gorion had planned this contingency for some time, understanding that he might not survive whatever forces hunted you. It is not much, but it is a direction, a purpose. You cannot return to Candlekeep without Gorion to vouch for you, without a rare book to pay for entry. The gates are closed to you. The fortress that was your home is now barred. You must go forward. You must find these friends of Gorion. You must discover why you are hunted. You must understand what you truly are. Later, as you uncover more of the plot surrounding the Iron Throne in Sarevok, you learn that this ambush was not random at all. It was orchestrated by those same hidden powers, their agents specifically seeking you and willing to kill Gorion to reach you. Whether the armored warrior on that road was Sarevok himself or one of his chosen enforcers is never explicitly confirmed. But the connection is clear in the pattern of events that follows. What matters is that Gorion died, protecting you from forces tied directly into the larger conspiracy that threatens the Sword Coast. The road stretches north toward the Friendly Arm Inn, and far beyond that, toward Baldur's Gate. You take the first steps of a journey that will change everything. You do not yet know about Bhaal or prophecy or the taint in your blood. You do not understand that you are part of something vast and terrible. You only know that Gorion is dead, that you are hunted, and that the only path open to you leads into a world of danger and mystery. This is where it begins. This is the origin, everything that follows, all the revelations and battles and choices, stems from this moment on a dark road when your old life ended and your true nature began to emerge. You are Gorion's ward, but you are also something else, something you have yet to discover. And the Sword Coast will never be the same once you learn the truth. Section 2. The Time of Troubles and Bhaal's Dark Legacy. The road north from Candlekeep stretches through wilderness and farmland, through small settlements and lonely crossroads. You walk it with a moan at your side, still reeling from Gorion's death, still trying to understand why armored warriors would ambush you on a dark road. The letter in your pack mentions the Friendly Arm Inn, mentions friends who might have answers, but the questions multiply faster than any hope of resolution. Who were those attackers? What did they want with you? Why would Gorion die rather than surrender you to them? The truth, when you eventually discover it, will be far stranger and more terrible than anything you can imagine in these early days of your journey. To understand what you are, you must first understand what happened 10 years before your flight from Candlekeep. You must understand the time of troubles, that cosmic catastrophe that shook the very foundations of reality across Faerun. The year was 1358 by Dale reckoning. The gods had grown distant from their worshippers, caught up in their own conflicts and machinations. Two deities in particular, Bane the Lord of Tyranny and Miakul the Lord of Bones, conceived an audacious plan. They would steal the Tablets of Fate, ancient artifacts upon which the fundamental laws governing divine power were inscribed. These tablets belonged to Io, the Overgod, the supreme being who stood above all other deities, who maintained the cosmic order itself. Bane and Miakul succeeded in their theft. They took the Tablets of Fate from Io's domain, perhaps believing themselves clever enough to evade detection, perhaps arrogant enough not to care. But Io knew. Of course, Io knew. The Overgods summoned the entire Faerunian pantheon to account for the theft, demanding that the guilty parties come forward and return what they had stolen. None confessed. The gods stood before Io in their celestial forms, and not one admitted responsibility. Some likely knew the truth, others suspected, but divine politics and ancient grudges kept them silent. Even Tyr, the god of justice himself, failed to identify the thieves despite his portfolio. For this failure, Io blinded him, a punishment that would become permanent. What Io did next shocked the cosmos. On the 15th day of Kithorn, in the early evening, the Overgod passed judgment not just on the guilty, but on the entire pantheon. Every deity of Faerun, from the mightiest to the least, was cast down from their divine realms. They were forced into mortal avatar forms and banished to walk Toril itself. Their immortality was stripped away. Their invulnerability became mortality. They could be wounded. They could be killed. Only one god was spared this fate. Helm, the god of guardians, the vigilant one, retained his divine power. Io tasked him with a singular purpose. He was to guard the celestial stairway, the path back to the divine realms. No god, regardless of their pleading or their threats or their power, would be permitted to return until the Tablets of Fate were recovered and the crisis resolved. The effects on Faerun were immediate and catastrophic. Divine magic became unreliable. Clerics discovered that their spells would only function if they remained within a mile of their deity's physical avatar. A priest separated from their god found themselves powerless, their prayers unanswered. Arcane magic, normally regulated by Mystra, the goddess of magic, became wild and unpredictable. Spells that should have worked failed spectacularly. Incantations that should have been harmless produced devastating results. The weave itself, the underlying structure through which magic flowed, grew unstable. Gods walked among mortals. Some tried to hide their identities. Others proclaimed themselves openly, gathering followers or seeking the tablets. Divine conflicts that had previously been fought in celestial realms now exploded across the mortal world. Cities became battlegrounds. Innocents died in the crossfire of divine vendettas. The natural order bent and broke under the weight of so much concentrated power in physical forms. Mystra, desperate to escape the mortal plane. Determined to reveal the thieves to Io and earn her way back to divinity, she made her way to the celestial stairway, where Helm stood his eternal watch. She approached him with information, with pleas, with demands. Helm refused her passage. His orders were absolute. No god would pass until the crisis ended. Mystra refused to accept this. She was magic itself incarnate. Surely she could force her way through. She began to cast spells, incredibly powerful incantations that should have been capable of destroying mountains or leveling cities. Every spell failed against Helm. The god of guardians stood unmoved, untouched, implacable. When Mystra continued to try, when she attempted to physically push past him despite his warnings, Helm killed her with a single strike. The goddess of magic died, and her death sent ripples of arcane chaos spreading across the world. Among all the gods cast down to mortal form, one had seen this coming. Bhaal, the lord of murder, had gazed into possible futures and witnessed his own death approaching. He was a god of assassination and violent death, of blood spilled in darkness and screams cut short. His portfolio was fear and ending, the sudden termination of life. For millennia, he had been worshipped by killers and feared by their victims. Now, he foresaw that the time of troubles would bring about his own destruction. But Bhaal was cunning. If he could not prevent his death, he would ensure his resurrection. The solution he devised was both elegant and monstrous. During the years before the time of troubles, while still in his full divine power, Bhaal walked Faerun in avatar form. He seduced mortal women across the realms. He fathered children, dozens of them, perhaps hundreds. Into each child, he placed a fragment of his divine essence, a spark of his godly power woven into their very souls. These children became known as the Bhaalspawn. They were mortal in most respects, born to mortal mothers, raised in mortal circumstances. But they carried within them something that no normal mortal possessed. The essence of a god of murder burned in their blood. It granted them power, made them stronger and more capable than they had any right to be. It also marked them, made them different in ways that could not always be seen, but could always be felt. Bhaal's plan relied on the nature of his own portfolio. He was murder incarnate. His children carried that legacy. They would be driven to kill, to embrace violence, to spill blood. More specifically, they would be driven to kill each other. The divine essence within each Bhaalspawn would call to the essence in others, drawing them into conflict. They would hunt each other across Faerun, deliberately or unknowingly. One by one, the Bhaalspawn would fall. Each death would release the divine essence, and that power would be absorbed by the killer. The essence would concentrate, moving from many vessels to fewer, from dozens to a handful, from a handful to one. When the last Bhaalspawn died, when all of Bhaal's essence had been gathered into a single vessel, and then released by that vessel's death, the god would be reborn. It might take years, it might take decades or centuries, but eventually, inevitably, Bhaal would return. His children were not heirs or successors. They were vessels, containers for fragments of power that would eventually be recombined into their source. Every Bhaalspawn was simultaneously precious and expendable, important as a carrier of essence, but ultimately fated to die. The prophecy of this plan was recorded long before the time of troubles. Alondo the seer, perhaps the greatest prophet in Faerûn's history, had lived and died centuries before your birth. He spent his life in Candlekeep, the very fortress where you were raised, speaking visions of events yet to come. His prophecies were recorded by scribes and preserved in the library. One of those prophecies spoke of the Bhaalspawn and their terrible destiny. Alondo foresaw the time of troubles, though he did not name it as such. He saw the chaos that would come, and he saw the children of Bhaal rising in that chaos, saw them driven to fratricide, saw the blood they would spill and the power they would claim. The prophecy was obscure in the way of all prophecies, filled with metaphor and symbol. But those who studied it understood that something terrible would emerge from the Lord of Murder's contingency plan. Bhaal's foresight proved accurate. During the time of troubles, in the year 1358 Dale Reckoning, on the 16th day of Elaint, the god in mortal form was confronted at Boresker Bridge. His opponent was Sarevok, a mortal adventurer who had acquired the avatar of Mask, the Lord of Shadows, in the form of a sword called Godsbane. The weapon was no ordinary blade. It contained the consciousness and power of a deity, and when Sarevok wielded it against Bhaal, the Lord of Murder fell. Bhaal died as he had foreseen, killed by a mortal wielding divine power. His physical avatar was destroyed. His divine essence was split. Part of it went to Sarevok, who absorbed multiple divine portfolios during the time of troubles, and ascended to godhood when Io resolved the crisis. But part of Bhaal's essence remained in his children, sleeping in their blood, waiting for the prophecy to unfold. The time of troubles lasted 6 months, from the 1st of Kithorn to the 15th of Marpanoth in 1358 Dale Reckoning. It ended when mortal heroes recovered the tablets of fate and returned them to Io. The Overgod descended to Mount Waterdeep to receive the tablets, and in a gesture that shocked those present, he destroyed them utterly. He ground them to dust. Then he created new laws to govern the gods, decreeing that divine power would henceforth flow from worship. A god's strength would depend on the number and devotion of their followers. Faith became currency. Belief became power. 2 of the mortal heroes who recovered the tablets were elevated to godhood as reward. Midnight, a young mage who had carried one of the tablets through incredible danger, became the new Mistra, taking on the portfolio of magic. Kelemver, another hero, would eventually become the new god of the dead, though his path to that position would be complicated by Sarevok's machinations. The gods returned to their planes. The crisis ended. Faerûn began to recover from 6 months of divine chaos. But the consequences of the time of troubles would echo for decades. The changes to divine power structures reshaped religions. New gods rose while others faded. The instability left scars on the world, places where reality had been wounded by too much divine power in too small a space. And the Bhaalspawn remained, scattered across Faerun, most of them unaware of their true nature. They carried fragments of a dead god in their souls. Some were infants, born just before or during the time of troubles. Others were children or young adults. A few were older, having been sired in the earliest years of Bhaal's preparations. They lived ordinary lives, or at least tried to. Many had no idea what they were. Others sensed something different about themselves, but did not understand it. A handful knew the truth and either embraced it or fled from it. You are one of these children. Gorion knew this. He had known it from the moment he first held you as an infant. That is why he took you to Candlekeep, the most secure and isolated place he could imagine. That is why he raised you in secret, trained you for dangers you could not yet understand, protected you from threats you did not know existed. He hoped that within Candlekeep's walls, you might escape the destiny written in your blood. He hoped that knowledge and wisdom might counter the divine essence of murder that you carried. But destiny is not so easily avoided. Other Bhaalspawn exist, and some of them have learned what they are. Some have embraced the power, given themselves over to the darkness their father represents. They seek other Bhaalspawn, driven by instinct or ambition, or the divine essence itself. When one Bhaalspawn kills another, they absorb that victim's essence, becoming stronger, moving one step further along Bhaal's design. The armored figure on the road, the warrior who killed Gorion, was connected to this truth, whether he was a Bhaalspawn himself or merely an agent of one. He came for you because of what you are. Gorion's death bought you escape, but it did not grant you safety. You are marked by your blood, by the spark of divinity that distinguishes you from normal mortals. And there are those who can sense that mark, who hunt specifically for it. The essence within you is both gift and curse. It grants you abilities that others must work lifetimes to achieve. You grow stronger faster than normal mortals. Your aptitude for combat or magic or stealth develops with unnatural speed. When you face danger, something awakens inside you, something that knows how to kill with terrible efficiency. This is your inheritance from the Lord of Murder, the birthright you never asked for and cannot refuse. But the essence also marks you as a target. Every other Bhaalspawn is both potential ally and inevitable enemy. The divine fragments call to each other, creating attraction and hostility in equal measure. You will meet others like yourself as you travel the Sword Coast. Some will become companions, at least temporarily. Others will try to kill you on sight. All of you are caught in a pattern established by a dying god, players in a game that began before you were born and will continue until only one remains. Bhaal's plan is elegant in its cruelty. By making his children weapons against each other, he ensured that the strongest, most capable, most ruthless would survive. natural selection driven by divine essence. The final Bhaalspawn, the one who absorbs all the others, will be a being of terrible power, mortal and divine combined. And when that being dies, when the last vessel containing all of Bhaal's collected essence is destroyed, the god will return, reborn from the death of his children, reconstituted from their spilled blood. The Lord of Murder will rise again. This is the truth that Gorion kept from you. This is the heritage that flows in your veins. You are the child of a god, but not in any sense that brings comfort or pride. You are a tool, a vessel, a piece in a cosmic puzzle designed by a deity who saw his own death approaching and refused to accept it as final. Your life, your choices, your very existence serves a purpose you had no part in choosing. The time of troubles reshaped Pharaoh in countless ways, but for you, its most important consequence was your own birth. Without Bhaal's foreknowledge, without his desperate plan for resurrection, you would not exist. The circumstances that brought you into being are rooted in divine death and the frantic preparations of a god facing mortality. You are simultaneously a miracle and an abomination, proof of divine power and evidence of divine desperation. As you walk north toward the Friendly Arm Inn, toward Khalid and Jaira, and whatever explanations they might offer, you do not yet know any of this. You cannot feel the essence sleeping in your blood. You do not understand that the power which sometimes surges through you in moments of anger or fear is the touch of divinity. You only know that you are hunted, that Gorion died protecting you, and that the world has suddenly become infinitely more dangerous than you ever imagined. The truth will come gradually, piece by piece, revelation by revelation. You will learn what you are. And when you finally understand, when the full weight of your heritage settles onto your shoulders, you will face the most important question of your life. Will you accept the role Bhaal designed for you? Will you embrace the essence of murder and become what your divine blood demands? Or will you fight against it, struggle to forge your own path despite the destiny written in your very soul? The answer is not predetermined. Bhaal's plan accounts for his children killing each other, but it does not dictate how they choose to live before that final confrontation. You can be a hero or a villain, a savior or a destroyer. The divine essence grants power, but it does not remove choice. Not yet, not unless you allow it to. The Sword Coast awaits you. Dangers beyond counting lie ahead. Other Bhaalspawn move through the same landscape, pursuing their own goals, following their own interpretations of what their heritage means. Some seek to unite the children of Bhaal. Others hunt them systematically. A few deny their nature and try to live normal lives, though such attempts rarely succeed for long. You will meet them in time, these siblings you never knew existed. You will fight beside some and against others. And with each encounter, you will better understand the terrible legacy of the time of troubles, the price that mortals pay when gods walk among them, and divine plans unfold across mortal generations. Section 3. The Iron Crisis and political machinations. The Sword Coast in the year 1368 Dale reckoning is a place of growing tension and barely suppressed violence. You feel it as you travel north from Candlekeep. See it in the nervous faces of merchants you pass. Hear it in the conversations at inns and crossroads. Something is deeply wrong with the region, a crisis that goes beyond normal banditry or seasonal hardship. The problem is iron, that fundamental metal upon which civilization depends, and it is failing across the entire coast. The crisis manifests in ways both dramatic and mundane. A farmer discovers his plow has crumbled overnight, the metal corroded as though exposed to decades of rust in mere hours. A merchant's entire shipment of swords shatters when unloaded, the blades breaking like clay rather than steel. Guards on patrol find their armor developing holes, weakening at joints and seams until it provides no protection at all. Everywhere, iron is becoming unreliable, turning brittle and useless without warning or explanation. The economic impact cannot be overstated. The Sword Coast depends on iron for agriculture, for defense, for trade, for the 1,000 daily tasks that keep society functioning. Without reliable metal, farming becomes nearly impossible. Tools break constantly, requiring replacement that grows ever more expensive as supply dwindles. Blacksmiths struggle to keep up with demand, but even their newly forged goods prove unreliable. Weapons commissioned at great expense fail in the moment they are most needed, leaving soldiers and adventurers vulnerable. Trade suffers catastrophically. Caravans that once moved freely along the coast may now hire mercenary escorts at ruinous rates, knowing that bandits have become both more numerous and more aggressive. Many merchants simply refuse to travel, waiting for the crisis to resolve rather than risk their goods and their lives. This withdrawal of trade creates shortages of all kinds. Cities that depend on imports face dwindling supplies of food, of luxury goods, of the raw materials needed for industry. Prices climb steadily as availability drops. Baldur's Gate, the great merchant city that dominates the northern Sword Coast, finds itself particularly vulnerable. The city built its prosperity on trade, on its position as a crossroads between north and south, between the interior and the sea. Merchants from Waterdeep and Neverwinter in the north meet traders from Am and Calimshan in the south. Goods flow through Baldur's Gate like blood through a heart, enriching the city and its ruling merchant councils. But the iron crisis threatens this entire system. The source of the tainted iron, investigators eventually determine, lies in the Nashkel mines far to the south. Nashkel itself is a small town near the border with Am, unremarkable, except for one crucial fact. Its mines produce the vast majority of iron ore for the entire region. The ore extracted from these mines travels north to Baldur's Gate, where smiths and craftsmen process it into finished goods. These iron products then form one of Baldur's Gate's primary exports, shipped by sea to distant markets. and generating enormous wealth for the merchant houses that control the trade. When the Nashkel ore becomes contaminated, when it produces iron that fails unpredictably, the entire economic structure of the northern Sword Coast begins to collapse. Baldur's Gate cannot simply switch to alternative sources. Nashkel is the only significant iron mine in the accessible region. Other deposits exist, certainly, but they are either too remote, too small, or controlled by groups unwilling to trade. The dwarven clans of the Cloakwood, for instance, operate their own mines, but keep their locations secret and do not engage in commerce with outsiders. The contamination itself proves mysterious. Alchemical analysis reveals that something is actively poisoning the ore as it is extracted. This is not natural degradation or an environmental factor. Someone is deliberately tainting the iron, using substances that cause the metal to become brittle when smelted. The poison is subtle enough that contaminated ore looks normal until it is processed and formed into tools or weapons. Only then does the weakness manifest, often catastrophically. Investigators sent to the Nashkel mines discover evidence of sabotage deep within the tunnels. Creatures that should not be present in an iron mine, kobolds and other monsters, appear to be the immediate agents of the contamination. But kobolds lack the sophistication for this kind of organized, sustained operation. Someone is directing them, providing them with the alchemical compounds needed to poison the ore, coordinating their efforts to ensure maximum disruption. The crisis extends beyond simple contamination. Bandit activity along the Sword Coast has exploded in recent months, rising from a manageable nuisance to a systematic threat. Multiple bandit groups, including the Black Talons and the Chill, operate with unusual coordination and resources. They do not simply rob caravans. They specifically target shipments of iron, stealing any untainted metal they can find and killing those who resist. This pattern suggests organization, funding, and purpose beyond typical banditry. The bandits seem to know which caravans carry valuable iron and which transport only contaminated goods. This intelligence requires either extensive spy networks or insider information from within the merchant houses themselves. The precision of the attacks, the way they focus specifically on iron rather than gold or other valuables, points to a coordinated campaign designed to worsen the shortage. The Flaming Fist, Baldur's Gate's famed mercenary company that serves as both city guard and military force, struggles to contain the bandit threat. The Fist is stretched thin, trying to patrol vast stretches of the coastway with insufficient numbers and increasingly unreliable equipment. Their weapons break in combat. Their armor fails. Morale suffers as soldiers question whether their gear will hold when they need it most. Duke Elton, the Grand Duke who commands the Flaming Fist, calls for reinforcements and increased patrols, but resources are limited and growing more so. Political tensions compound the economic crisis. Suspicion falls heavily on Am, the wealthy nation to the south. Baldur's Gate and Am have long been rivals, competing for trade routes and political influence. The fact that the contaminated iron comes from mines near the Amnian border strikes many in Baldur's Gate as too convenient to be coincidence. Rumors spread that Am orchestrated the entire crisis, that Amnian agents poisoned the mines to damage Baldur's Gate economically and prepare for military conquest. These accusations inflame existing hostilities. Amnian merchants in Baldur's Gate face harassment and suspicion. Some are arrested on flimsy pretexts. Others flee before mobs can target them. Diplomatic communications between the two powers grow hostile. Am denies any involvement in the Iron Crisis, but Baldur's Gate's ruling council questions these denials. Some counselors advocate for military action, arguing that Baldur's Gate should strike first before Am can press whatever advantage the crisis provides. The city's response to these mounting threats is to close its gates. The southern entrance at Worm's Crossing, the great bridge that spans the River Shinthar, is sealed to all but citizens and those with specific authorization. This closure cuts off the primary trade route to Am, to Nashkel, to Beregost, and the settlements of the southern coast. It is meant as a defensive measure, a way to control who enters the city during a time of crisis. But it also serves as an economic weapon, punishing Am and the southern towns by denying them access to Baldur's Gate's markets. The closure creates immediate hardship for communities that depend on trade with Baldur's Gate. Beregost, positioned along the route between Baldur's Gate and Nashkel, loses much of its commercial traffic. The town's inns and merchants suffer as caravans stop traveling. Nashkel itself, already dealing with the mysterious contamination of its mines, finds its economy further damaged by inability to sell ore northward. Small villages and farms that relied on selling goods in Baldur's Gate's markets must find alternative buyers or watch their produce rot. Within Baldur's Gate, the merchant houses maneuver for advantage. The crisis creates opportunities for those ruthless enough to seize them. If a merchant house can secure a supply of untainted iron, it can charge extraordinary prices and dominate the market. The competition for such supplies becomes cutthroat. Rival companies spy on each other, attempt to sabotage each other's deals, bribe officials for favorable treatment. The veneer of civilized commerce gives way to something closer to economic warfare. One organization seems to weather the crisis better than most. The Iron Throne, a trading company with operations across the Sword Coast, somehow maintains access to reliable iron even as other houses struggle. They charge premium prices naturally, but they can deliver functioning weapons and tools when no one else can. This success breeds both admiration and suspicion. How does the Iron Throne obtain iron that does not fail? Where are they getting it when the Nashkel mines produce only contaminated ore? The Iron Throne's leadership deflects such questions with vague references to trade secrets and supplier confidentiality. Sarevok Anshev, a prominent figure within the organization, proves particularly effective at expanding the Iron Throne's influence during the crisis. He negotiates deals with the Flaming Fist, with the Merchant Council, with noble houses. His reputation grows as a man who can solve problems, who can deliver results when others offer only excuses. Few question too closely how he manages these achievements. In desperate times, people accept help from questionable sources. The Iron Throne's rivals find themselves struggling in ways that seem almost orchestrated. The Seven Suns, a major trading company, begins making bizarre decisions. Contracts are mishandled. Shipments go missing. Key personnel behave erratically. The Merchants League experiences similar problems. It is as though these organizations are being undermined from within, sabotaged by their own members. Later investigation would reveal the truth that doppelgangers infiltrated these companies, replacing key figures and deliberately driving them toward collapse. But during the crisis itself, the infiltration remains undetected. The rival companies simply appear incompetent, unable to adapt to changing conditions. You walk through this landscape of fear and scarcity as you journey north from Candlekeep. You see the evidence of the crisis everywhere. Farmers working with wooden tools because their iron ones have failed. Merchants offering outrageous prices for simple goods. Guards at crossroads nervously fingering weapons they do not quite trust. The atmosphere is tense, paranoid. People hoard what they have and view strangers with suspicion. Trust, always a fragile commodity, becomes nearly extinct. The bandits are a constant threat on the roads. You encounter evidence of their attacks, burned wagons abandoned on the roadside, corpses left unburied, survivors telling tales of overwhelming force and brutal efficiency. The bandits seem to have access to quality weapons and armor, better equipped than many of the Flaming Fist patrols trying to stop them. This disparity raises questions. Who is funding these bandits? Who is supplying them? Why are they focusing so specifically on iron rather than more portable valuables? The political implications of the crisis extend beyond Baldur's Gate and Am. Other powers watch nervously. Waterdeep to the north monitors the situation, concerned that instability on the Sword Coast might spread. Elven communities send investigators like Zan of Everesca to determine what is happening and whether it threatens elven interests. The Harper Network, that secretive organization of spies and agents working for what they define as the greater good, also takes interest. Multiple factions maneuver around the crisis, each pursuing their own agenda, each trying to understand and potentially exploit the chaos. The shortage drives innovation born of desperation. Blacksmiths experiment with alternative metals and alloys. Bronze, largely obsolete since the widespread adoption of iron, sees renewed use. Weapons made from bone or stone appear in markets where once only metal would have been considered. Prices for magical weapons, immune to the contamination that affects mundane iron, skyrocket beyond the reach of any but the wealthiest buyers. A simple enchanted dagger might cost more than a house, valued not for its magical properties, but simply because it will not crumble unexpectedly. The religious community offers various explanations for the crisis. Some priests proclaim it divine punishment for the region's sins. Others suggest that dark powers are at work, that demons or devils have cursed the iron to sow chaos. A few connect it to the lingering effects of the time of troubles, arguing that the weave remains unstable, and that this instability somehow affects metal. None of these explanations lead to solutions. The temples can offer prayers, but not reliable iron. As the crisis deepens, as the shortage becomes more acute, the calls for military action grow louder. War hawks in Baldur's Gate argue that the city should seize the Nashkel mines by force, should occupy the region, and secure the iron supply directly. Am, they claim, has proven itself an enemy through its alleged sabotage. Why should Baldur's Gate continue treating Am as a legitimate power rather than the hostile force it has revealed itself to be? These arguments gain traction as conditions worsen, as shortages bite deeper into daily life. Am makes similar calculations. If Baldur's Gate is preparing for war, should Am wait to be attacked or strike first? The closure of Worm's Crossing could be read as preparation for invasion, cutting off escape routes before launching an assault. Amnian troops begin mustering near the border. Scouts from both sides probe the other's defenses. The situation drifts toward open conflict, two powers circling each other like wolves, each waiting for the other to show weakness. This is the world you enter when you leave Candlekeep's protection, a world balanced on the edge of war, where iron fails and bandits prowl and cities close their gates in fear. The iron crisis forms the backdrop to your journey, the context in which your personal quest for answers will unfold. You do not yet understand that this crisis is connected to your heritage, that the forces driving it are the same forces that killed Gorion. You simply see a troubled region and try to navigate it carefully, seeking the friendly arm in and whatever explanations wait there. The truth, of course, is more sinister than economic sabotage or political maneuvering. The iron crisis is not an accident or a natural development. It is a weapon carefully crafted and deliberately deployed. Someone orchestrated every element, from the contamination of the Nashkel mines to the bandit raids to the diplomatic tensions. Someone benefits from the chaos, grows stronger as Baldur's Gate and Am drift toward war, and that someone is connected to you, to your heritage as a Bhaalspawn, in ways that will reshape your understanding of everything. Section 4. Sarevok Anshev, the Dark Brother. You have a brother. You do not know this yet as you walk the roads of the Sword Coast, seeking answers about Gorion's death and your own mysterious origins. But somewhere in this troubled region, another Bhaalspawn moves with purpose and terrible ambition. His name is Sarevok Anshev, And everything you have witnessed, from the Iron Crisis to the bandit raids, to the political tensions pushing toward war, ties back into his grand design. Sarevok's story begins much like yours, with birth as one of Bhaal's mortal children, with divine essence woven into his soul. Where your path led to Candlekeep and Gorion's protection, Sarevok's early years took a darker turn. As an infant, he was among those Bhaalspawn connected to the hidden Temple of Bhaal in the Cloakwood Forest. That temple, once a center of the murder god's worship, became the site of a Harper raid in which Gorion himself took part. During that raid, Bhaalspawn children were freed from the cultists who planned to use them in dark rituals. And Gorion took one child away to Candlekeep. That child was you. Sarevok's fate diverged. He did not end up in Candlekeep. Instead, he grew up in Baldur's Gate, spending at least part of his youth surviving on the streets before being adopted by Realtor Anshev, a powerful merchant and high-ranking member of the Iron Throne. Accounts suggest that Sarevok was taken in as an orphan of obscure origin. And based on what we know, we can assume his early life honed both his ruthlessness and his understanding that power means survival. Realtor's reasons for adopting Sarevok are never fully spelled out in canon sources. Some in-world commentators speculate that Realtor might have sensed something unusual in the boy, perhaps recognizing potential that went far beyond that of a common street urchin. Others suggest he simply saw a clever, fierce youth who could be shaped into an effective heir and enforcer. This could imply that Realtor's decision was at least partially pragmatic, choosing a boy who could excel in the Iron Throne's blend of commerce and intimidation. Under Realtor's guidance, Sarevok received an education unavailable to most orphans. He learned trade, negotiation, and the intricate politics of a merchant-ruled city. At the same time, he trained relentlessly in combat. He grew into a towering warrior in heavy armor, wielding a great sword with deadly efficiency. Those who fought him noted an almost supernatural intensity, a feeling that opposing him meant facing something more than a mere man. Based on the nature of Bhaalspawn essence, this could suggest that his divine heritage subtly amplified his presence on the battlefield, turning natural talent into something far more terrifying. At some point, Sarevok discovered the truth about his origins. He learned of Bhaal, the dead lord of murder. He uncovered references to the Bhaalspawn, mortals carrying fragments of a god's essence. He studied Alondo's prophecies and saw himself in their lines, understood that he was one of those marked children whose lives would shape the future of Faerun. More importantly, he came to believe that the path open to the Bhaalspawn was not simply survival, but ascension. In his search for power, Sarevok found a mentor in Winsky Perorate, a dark-minded scholar and mage who taught him about the nature of divinity and the possibility of mortals ascending to godhood. Winsky's teachings drew on forbidden lore and the histories of beings such as Sarevok and Midnight, mortals who rose to godhood during the time of troubles. From these examples, Sarevok formed a conclusion. If a mortal could claim enough power, enough fear, enough death, perhaps they could take on a vacant divine mantle. Given his heritage, Sarevok fixed his sights on Bhaal's empty portfolio of murder. Alondo's prophecy, as preserved in Candlekeep, speaks of the Bhaalspawn bringing great bloodshed, their deaths and killings connected to Bhaal's return. Sarevok interpreted this as an opportunity. If he, as a Bhaalspawn, could orchestrate enough death and chaos, if he could stand at the center of a vast storm of slaughter, then he might not only hasten Bhaal's return, but seize that power for himself. This is an interpretation rather than an explicit statement of the prophecy, but Sarevok acts as though he believes it absolutely. That belief shapes every step he takes across the Sword Coast. To achieve this, he needs war, not just skirmishes or local unrest, but full-scale conflict between great powers. The rivalry between Baldur's Gate and Am provides your brother with fertile ground. The two states compete for trade routes and influence. Their armies already exist, standing ready in case tension turns to open battle. Sarevok sees in this rivalry the kindling for a vast fire of death. All he has to do is arrange the spark and fan the flames. The Iron Crisis becomes that spark. From within the Iron Throne, Sarevok uses resources and contacts to sabotage the Nashkel mines, spreading tainted iron across the Sword Coast. At the same time, he arranges for bandit forces like the Black Talons and the Chill to target caravans, particularly those carrying iron and weapons. The result is a crippling shortage, growing fear, and skyrocketing tension between Baldur's Gate and Am, each suspecting the other of sabotage or economic warfare. The Iron Throne profits from this chaos, thanks to its secret cloakwood mines that produce untainted ore. Sarevok's role within the company lets him turn crisis into opportunity, presenting the Iron Throne as a key supplier, while quietly deepening the very crisis he pretends to solve. This dual role allows him to raise his standing in both the merchant hierarchy and the city's political structure. He moves smoothly between boardrooms and council chambers, speaking as a problem solver, even as he creates new problems in the shadows. During this rise, he learns about you. Information filters in from various sources. Harpers investigating Bhaalspawn, rumors from Candlekeep, reports that Gorion, a known harper, has been caring for a mysterious ward for years. When Sarevok connects these threads, he understands that another Bhaalspawn exists nearby, one who received protection, training, and care that he was denied. This could suggest that jealousy mixes with strategic thinking here. A sibling of equal potential, raised under a powerful mentor, could easily become an obstacle to his divine ambitions. In Sarevok's calculations, you are not simply a rival, you are a threat that must be removed. Sarevok makes a decision. He will eliminate Gorion's ward before this unknown sibling has time to understand their own nature or build enough strength to challenge him. He arranges an ambush on the road out of Candlekeep, choosing a time when he knows Gorion will be escorting you away from the fortress. Powerful warriors are assembled for the task, including an armored leader whose presence and voice will burn into your memory from that night forward. Whether Sarevok himself is that armored figure on the road is never fully spelled out within the original game. The imposing armor, the commanding voice, and later revelations strongly imply that this is indeed Sarevok, confronting Gorion directly. Many players and lore readers interpret the scene that way. At the same time, the game does not explicitly name him during the ambush, so strictly speaking, what you know for certain is that a powerful leader demanded you be handed over and killed Gorion when he refused, based on the later evidence tying the ambush to Sarevok's broader plans. It is reasonable to understand that, at the very least, the attack was carried out under his command, whether personally or through a trusted agent. In any case, the result is the same. On that dark road, Gorion dies buying your escape. The armored leader and his forces fail to secure you, but they succeed in tearing away your protector. From Sarevok's perspective, this could have seemed like partial success. The mentor is dead, the ward alone in the wild. He likely expects the sword coast itself to finish what the ambush began, believing that an inexperienced youth will not survive long without guidance. When word eventually reaches him that you not only survived, but began actively unraveling the Iron Crisis, Sarevok shifts tactics. You are no longer just a name on a report. You are a moving piece on the same board, a sibling who refuses to disappear. He sets more assassins on your trail, attempts to have you killed at the Friendly Arm Inn, and has bandits and agents watch your progress across the region. Each failure on their part makes clear that you are not an incidental threat. You are becoming his opposite number, another Bhaalspawn shaping the same story from the other side. Inside the Iron Throne, Sarevok grows more ruthless. He uses his foster father Realtor and the other leaders as stepping stones. Once their usefulness ends, he arranges their deaths in Candlekeep, framing others and cutting off anyone who might expose his true intentions. To the outside world, it looks as though the Iron Throne is simply undergoing internal turmoil. In truth, Sarevok is consolidating power, clearing away anyone who might hesitate at the scale of the war he is trying to ignite. His next move is political. Baldur's Gate is ruled by a council of Grand Dukes, and Sarevok's growing influence allows him to maneuver for a place among them. With Duke Elton poisoned and weakened, with fear at an all-time high due to the Iron Crisis and banditry, Sarevok presents himself as a strong leader who can restore order. This could imply that he understands not only warfare, but also how fear shapes civic decisions. A desperate city will often turn to the person who promises decisive action, even if that person is the one who created the crisis in the first place. You arrive in Baldur's Gate just as Sarevok's plans reach a critical point. Your investigations into the Nashkel mines, the Cloakwood operation, and the bandit camp give you pieces of the puzzle, enough to suspect the Iron Throne and eventually Sarevok himself, when you confront him, and the council with your evidence during the ducal palace ceremony, you force his hand. The careful mask he has worn slips, and he chooses open violence rather than risk losing everything to exposure. The hall erupts into chaos, and Sarevok flees into the Undercity, retreating to the ancient Temple of Bhaal beneath Baldur's Gate. That temple, ruined yet still steeped in the god of murder's lingering influence, becomes the stage for your final confrontation. Sarevok has failed to spark the large-scale war he envisioned, but he still sees a path to power through the death of his sibling. If he kills you in the very heart of Bhaal's forgotten shrine, if he absorbs your essence and stands alone as the most powerful Bhaalspawn on the Sword Coast, then in his mind, the path toward apotheosis remains open. This interpretation shows how fully he has committed to his reading of the prophecy. He no longer seeks wealth or political status. He seeks transcendence through blood. You meet him there, in a chamber surrounded by cracked altars and faded symbols of murder. He calls you kin, taunts you, insists that you cannot escape what you are. In a sense, he is right. You are both Bhaalspawn, both shaped by a dead god's final gambit. Yet in another sense, he is deeply wrong. His life is proof that heritage does not dictate morality. He chose to embrace Bhaal's legacy fully, to become an architect of slaughter. You chose a different path. Your confrontation is not simply between siblings or rivals. It is between two possible answers to the question of what a Bhaalspawn can be. The battle that follows is desperate and defining. When Sarevok falls, struck down in the very temple that should have been his greatest advantage, his divine essence flows outward and into you. The prophecies agree that Bhaalspawn grow stronger when they defeat one another. What you experience in that moment confirms it at a visceral level. Power joins power, and for a heartbeat, you stand closer to Bhaal's design than you ever have before. It would be easy to lean into that, to see yourself as Sarevok's true successor, and continue his climb toward godhood. Instead, you step away from that edge. You take the strength because you cannot refuse it, but you refuse to let it define your purpose, based on what is later revealed in the broader saga. This choice matters deeply. Not in the sense that it erases the Bhaalspawn curse, but in the sense that it proves agency still exists within the framework of prophecy. Sarevok's story ends in the Temple of Bhaal as a warning about what happens when a Bhaalspawn accepts their heritage without question. Yours continues as an example of what can happen when one of Bhaal's children insists on choosing, even when the blood in their veins was designed to decide for them. Section 5. The journey across the Sword Coast. The road north from where Gorion fell becomes your classroom, your proving ground, your introduction to a world far more complex and dangerous than the safe confines of Candlekeep ever suggested. You walk it with Emone at your side, this friend from childhood who refused to let you face the unknown alone. Her presence is both comfort and responsibility. She followed you by choice, placing herself in danger because she values your friendship more than her own safety. You carry that knowledge like a weight, grateful and uneasy, in equal measure. The letter from Gorion directs you to the Friendly Arm Inn, a fortified establishment that serves as way station and sanctuary along the coastway. The inn sits roughly a day's travel north of Candlekeep, positioned where the road begins climbing into more rugged terrain. You approach it with caution born of recent trauma. The ambush that killed Gorion taught you that even seemingly safe roads can harbor deadly threats. Your hand rests on your weapon as you near the gates, watching for danger, expecting another attack at any moment. The attack comes, but not as you anticipate. A robed figure approaches you near the inn's entrance, calling out in seemingly friendly greeting. Something about him feels wrong. The way he moves, the intensity in his eyes, the tone of his voice. When he begins casting a spell, when his hands move through arcane patterns meant to kill, you barely react in time. The battle is swift and brutal. Your opponent is a mage, dangerous but overconfident. He expected to catch you unprepared, to strike you down before you could defend yourself. Instead, you kill him, your first deliberate taking of a life. On his body, you find a letter that makes your blood run cold. He was sent specifically to assassinate you, and the contract description makes it clear that your appearance and destination were known in advance. This could imply that those who killed Gorion have informants and reach far beyond a single ambush on a dark road. Inside the Friendly Arm Inn, you find the people Gorion's letter mentioned. Khalid and Jaira wait in the common room, a married couple who served with Gorion in the Harper organization. Khalid is a fighter, skilled with blade, and bowed despite a nervous manner and stutter that makes him seem unsure. Jaira is a druid, stern and practical, with the confidence that Khalid sometimes lacks. They knew Gorion well, considered him a friend and ally. When you tell them of his death, grief and concern cross their faces in equal measure. They offer condolences, but they also offer something more: help, guidance, and a purpose beyond simple survival. Jaira explains what she can about your situation. There are forces at work in the Sword Coast that she does not fully understand, but she knows that you are in danger and that Gorion died trying to keep you safe. She and Khalid offer to accompany you, to use their experience and skills to protect you as you travel. At the same time, they carry a request from the Harpers. Someone must investigate the iron crisis plaguing the region and the reports of trouble in the Nashkel mines. Rather than simply flee and hide, you can move toward this problem, learning more about the forces destabilizing the coast and possibly discovering why you have become a target. You agree because there are few other paths open. Returning to Candlekeep is impossible without a rare book to gain entry. And without Gorion's sponsorship, you would likely be turned away at the gate. Staying in one place would make you an easy mark for the assassins already on your trail. Moving with experienced companions toward a specific goal feels safer than wandering aimlessly. And beneath the practical reasoning is a deeper drive. Curiosity. Why are you important enough to merit assassination contracts? What is it about your past that Gorion never fully explained? The need to know pushes you south as much as fear drives you away from Candlekeep. The journey to Nashkel takes you along the coastway, and then inland. You pass through Beregost, a town that serves as a crossroads for travelers heading between Baldur's Gate and Am. Beregost feels strained when you arrive. The Iron Crisis and bandit raids have taken their toll. Merchants complain about lost shipments and broken weapons. Guards keep nervous watch with blades they fear might shatter in the next fight. Yet, despite the tension, the town offers opportunities. There you meet potential companions whose paths align with yours for a time, each one bringing their own story into your growing narrative. Minsk, a ranger from the distant land of Rashimen, joins you in Beregost or Nashkel, depending on where your feet carry you first. He is large in body and larger in personality, with a boundless enthusiasm that contrasts sharply with the grim events unfolding around you. He speaks to Boo, his miniature giant space hamster, as though the tiny creature is his tactical advisor and closest confidant. Some might dismiss him as foolish, but his skill in battle and unwavering loyalty quickly prove otherwise. He seeks to rescue Dynair, a Rashimi witch he has sworn to protect, from gnolls who hold her captive. Helping him with this quest builds a bond rooted in shared struggle. Dynair, once freed from the gnoll stronghold, shows herself to be a disciplined and powerful wizard. She is serious, thoughtful, and far more analytical than Minsk. Her perspective on the troubles of the Sword Coast hints at a broader understanding of mystic and political currents. While the game does not spell out all her inner thoughts, her comments suggest she sees patterns in the Iron Crisis and bandit activity that go beyond simple misfortune. It would be reasonable to assume that someone with her training recognizes that such events rarely occur without intelligent direction. Other travelers cross your path with goals that intersect yours. Edwin, a red wizard of Thay, may attempt to hire you to kill Dynair instead of rescue her, reflecting the political enmity between their backgrounds. His arrogance and ruthless outlook form a sharp contrast with more idealistic companions. Yet, his magical power can be undeniably useful if you choose to travel together. Viconia, a drow priestess of Shar, appears on the surface world pursued by a flaming fist mercenary who seeks to kill her simply for what she is. If you intervene and save her, she can join you as a cleric, bringing healing and darker divine magic, along with a worldview shaped by exile and suspicion. You also encounter Zan, a moonblade wielding elven enchanter, deep within the Nashkel mines. He has already seen the worst of what infests those tunnels by the time you find him. His pessimistic outlook borders on comical in its certainty of doom. Yet he continues to fight alongside you, casting spells and lifting his sword in battles he insists are hopeless. His presence adds another distinct voice to your growing band, a reminder that courage can exist even under a constant expectation of failure. The world opens up as you travel. You visit the wizard Thalanter at High Hedge, who offers magical items and practical advice. You wander through the colorful chaos of the Nashkel Carnival, where entertainers and merchants attempt to distract visitors from the heaviness of the times. You storm the Knoll stronghold to save Dynair, fighting through ranks of hyena-headed warriors. Each location you pass through adds another layer to your understanding of the Sword Coast, its people, and its fragile balance. The Nashkel mines themselves are the heart of the immediate crisis. These mines supply most of the region's iron, and recently their product has become unreliable. Miners speak of monsters in the tunnels, of missing workers, of fear that grows with every descent into the deeper levels. The foreman begs for help, explaining that the mine may have to close entirely if the danger continues. If that happens, the iron shortage will only grow worse, deepening the suffering and instability already spreading across the coast. You descend into the mines and learn quickly that something unnatural is happening. Kobolds infest the tunnels in numbers and organization that go far beyond what should be expected from such creatures. They use choke points and ambushes, attack with poisoned arrows, and fight under direction. You find clear signs of sabotage as you explore. Barrels of strange substances used to contaminate ore, papers that reference supplies and orders, and equipment placed with the clear goal of ruining iron as it is extracted. Based on what is found, it is reasonable to conclude that this is not the work of simple monsters acting on instinct. Someone is controlling them and giving them the tools to poison the region's lifeblood. At the lowest level of the mine, you confront Mulahi, a half-orc priest who has been directing the kobolds. He serves sinister interests and reveals under pressure that he takes orders from a figure named Tazok, a powerful leader connected to bandit activity in the area. Mulahi's role is that of a middle agent, the one who oversees the sabotage work on the ground. The way he speaks and the letters you find suggest that he does not fully understand the wider plan, only his particular task in a larger chain. This structure hints at an organization with layers, where each person knows just enough to do their job and no more. Defeating Mulahi breaks the immediate threat in the Nashkel mines. The kobolds, deprived of leadership, lose their coordination. The miners can return, clear out the remaining threats, and restart production. This resolves the local component of the crisis, but the bigger pattern remains. The iron crisis was not caused solely by sabotage in Nashkel. Bandits continue raiding caravans. Fear continues to rise. Documents on Mulahi tie his actions to Tazok, and from Tazok, the trail leads toward the broader network behind the bandits. You infiltrate the bandit camp, a fortified encampment hidden in the wood of sharp teeth. There you find not only Tazok and his warriors, but also proof that the Black Talons, the Chill, and other groups are being paid and coordinated. Many of these documents bear the mark or name of the Iron Throne. Caravan schedules, targeted routes, and reports on stolen iron shipments show that this is not random robbery. It is a controlled operation designed to worsen the shortage and funnel untainted iron into the hands of specific buyers. When examined as a whole, this evidence strongly suggests that the Iron Throne is not just capitalizing on the crisis, but intimately involved in creating it. Further clues point you toward the Cloakwood, where the Iron Throne operates a secret mine of its own. Unlike Nashkel, this mine uses slave labor and answers directly to Iron Throne leadership. Cloakwood is a dense, dangerous forest filled with giant spiders, hostile druids, and other threats. As you press deeper, you encounter people who speak of the Iron Throne's operation with fear and hatred. The presence of chained workers and harsh overseers in the mine confirms that this is not a legitimate, above-board business venture. It is a clandestine operation meant to quietly replace Nashkel's failing output with ore fully under the Iron Throne's control. At the bottom of the Cloakwood mine, you face Daviorn, the mage overseeing this enterprise. He fights with traps, guards, and summoned creatures, and he stands as the immediate embodiment of the Iron Throne's ruthless policy. In his papers, you find connections to Baldur's Gate and instructions that tie his work into a larger scheme. These documents and your actions to flood the mine and free the slaves become part of the case you will later bring to Duke Elton. Based on these links, it becomes clear that the Iron Crisis, the banditry, and the secret mine are all pieces of the same design. During all of this, your own nature begins to press against the boundaries of your awareness. You grow stronger at a pace that seems remarkable even in a world where adventurers can advance quickly. In moments of great danger or anger, you feel something inside you surge, a power that does not come solely from training or equipment. Disturbing dreams visit you as you rest, filled with images of blood, strange visions of a presence that feels both alien and intimately familiar. What you experience matches closely what later lore describes about Bhaalspawn dreams and inner turmoil, suggesting that these visions are early manifestations of the divine essence you carry. Occasionally, you encounter individuals whose presence resonates with something deep inside you, though the game keeps these moments subtle, based on what is later revealed about Bhaalspawn recognizing one another. One could reasonably infer that such encounters hint at this shared heritage, even if your character does not fully understand it at the time. The idea that the Bhaalspawn are drawn into each other's orbits through dreams, coincidences, and escalating conflicts fits well with the outcomes seen across the saga. Emone remains at your side through all of this. She fights, she jokes. She complains about the road and the lack of comfort. And she remembers with you the quieter days in Candlekeep. She also adapts with remarkable speed to life as a thief, and later shows talent for magic if you guide her down that path. In the context of later revelations outside the first game, Some fans have discussed whether this adaptability might hint at something more in her nature. Within Baldur's Gate itself, however, she is presented simply as your steadfast friend and fellow orphan, her sudden growth explained by necessity and raw aptitude rather than explicit divine heritage. The evidence you gather from Nashkel, the bandit camp, and the Cloakwood mine all point in the same direction. The Iron Throne stands at the center of the Sword Coast's suffering, engineering scarcity and tension for profit, and, as you will soon learn, for even darker reasons. The name Sarevok appears more frequently in documents and rumors, attached to decisive orders and bold political moves. Bit by bit, your path is being drawn toward Baldur's Gate, toward the great city that has been watching the crisis with growing alarm, and toward the confrontation with the man who stands behind so much of what has gone wrong. Your journey across the Sword Coast has taken you from scholar's ward to active agent in regional history. You have seen how a single conspiracy can warp economies, fuel fear, and nearly push cities into war. You have discovered that your own life is intertwined with these events more deeply than coincidence alone can explain. The road has shown you both the best and worst of Faerun's people, and the companions who walk beside you have become your chosen family. With their help, you are ready to bring what you have learned to Baldur's Gate itself and challenge the architect of the Iron Crisis on his own ground. Section 6: Confrontation, Revelation, and Legacy. The Iron Throne headquarters rises in Baldur's Gate as a monument to mercantile power. Tall stone walls, guarded entrances, and richly furnished offices all speak of wealth gathered through years of trade along the Sword Coast. Within these halls, contracts are signed, caravans are arranged, and as your investigations reveal, conspiracies are nurtured. When you step through these doors, you do so not as a supplicant or potential business partner, but as someone who has traced the region's suffering back to this very place. Fighting your way through the headquarters, you encounter guards and officers who may or may not understand the true depth of the Iron Throne's schemes. Some fight fiercely, likely believing they are defending a legitimate business from attackers. Others seem less committed, perhaps sensing that something foul lies behind their employer's profits. As you push higher, you gather physical evidence in the form of letters, ledgers, and orders that tie the company directly to the Iron Crisis, the bandit raids, and the secret Cloakwood mine. These documents, taken together, form a chain of proof that you will later lay before the city's rulers. On the upper floor, you confront Realtor Anshev and several other senior Iron Throne leaders who have come to the city. Their awareness of Sarevok's ultimate intentions is a matter of some debate among fans, but the game strongly suggests that they are more concerned with profit and power than with prophecy. They are certainly complicit in the economic manipulation that has caused so much suffering. Whether they fully grasp that Sarevok's end goal is not only wealth, but a continent-shaking war and eventual apotheosis is less clear. The way events unfold could imply that they underestimated the scope of the forces they had helped set in motion. Before these leaders can be brought before Duke Elton, they are murdered. Sarevok's agents strike swiftly, eliminating Realtor and the others, and framing you for the crime. This ruthless act removes potential witnesses who could testify about Sarevok's rise inside the Iron Throne. It also allows him to redirect suspicion toward you, presenting himself as a stabilizing figure in a moment of sudden internal collapse. This move fits his pattern throughout the story. When people cease to be useful or become potential liabilities, he removes them without hesitation. Duke Elton, already investigating the Iron Throne, hears your account and examines your evidence. He sees that the company has engineered the Iron Crisis and orchestrated attacks on trade. But the poisoning that soon strikes him leaves him too weak to act directly. In the power vacuum that follows, Sarevok steps in, with one Duke incapacitated and others unnerved by recent murders and economic turmoil. Sarevok positions himself as the answer to Baldur's Gate's troubles. His appointment as a Grand Duke happens at a moment when the city is desperate for decisive leadership, which, from a political perspective, could suggest that he timed each crisis carefully to open just such an opportunity. You find yourself declared an outlaw, blamed for crimes Sarevok committed, and denied the legitimacy that your evidence should have earned. The flaming fist is turned against you, following orders based on falsified accounts. Yet even now, not everyone is convinced. Some nobles and officials begin to harbor doubts about the suddenness and convenience of Sarevok's rise. You find allies willing to hide you, to give you information or passage, and to listen when you describe what you discovered in Nashkel, Cloakwood, and the Iron Throne's own headquarters. This quiet resistance within the city becomes the foundation for the final challenge you will make. The decisive confrontation occurs at the Ducal Palace. Sarevok stands in ceremonial armor, prepared to be fully confirmed as a Grand Duke. The hall fills with nobles, officials, and guards, all expecting a formal proceeding that will stabilize the city's government. Instead, you arrive with your companions and your evidence, documents that link Sarevok to the Iron Throne's crimes, testimony from those freed in Cloakwood, proof of his involvement in Realtor's death and Duke Elton's poisoning. In narrative terms, this is the moment when all the strands you have followed across the Sword Coast are brought together in the public eye. You present your case, and at first, Sarevok responds with denial and counter-accusation. He tries to cast you as a troublemaker, an ambitious adventurer seeking to elevate yourself by slandering a legitimate merchant and newly chosen duke. But the weight of the documents and witnesses begins to tell. The assembled dukes and nobles see patterns that can no longer be dismissed as coincidence. Sarevok's attempts to redirect suspicion falter under the cumulative pressure of facts. When it becomes clear that he cannot simply talk his way out, Sarevok turns to the method that has always been his true language: violence, He and his hidden allies attack in the heart of the palace, turning what was meant to be a ceremony into a deadly melee. Doppelgangers, assassins, and fanatics reveal themselves and strike at the dukes and the crowd. In that chaos, you must protect Duke Belt and any other surviving Grand Dukes from assassination, while fending off the forces Sarevok has positioned throughout the hall. If too many dukes fall, the city's leadership collapses, and Sarevok's path to power looks very different. The game tying your success to their survival reinforces how closely the city's fate is tied to this moment. Once his immediate gambit fails, and you prevent the slaughter of Baldur's Gate's leadership, Sarevok flees. He descends into the Undercity, the forgotten ruins beneath the city, and takes refuge in the old Temple of Bhaal. This is both a tactical retreat and a symbolic choice. By withdrawing to his father's ancient sanctuary, he is embracing his identity as Bhaalspawn completely. Based on what we know of Bhaal's followers, choosing that site for the final confrontation is no coincidence. The temple carries lingering divine resonance, and Sarevok believes that prevailing there will seal his right to the Lord of Murder's legacy. The Undercity is a relic of earlier settlements, overrun with monsters and the dead. You and your companions fight through its dangers, following the traces of cultists and murderers who still cling to the memory of Bhaal's worship. The Temple of Bhaal itself stands as a dark echo of what once was. Cracked altars, faded symbols, and blood-stained stone suggest centuries of sacrifice before Bhaal's death in the time of troubles. Walking into that space, knowing both your own heritage and Sarevok's, gives the confrontation a weight that goes beyond mere politics or vengeance. Inside, Sarevok waits for you. He has gathered what remains of his loyalists, including mages and warriors prepared to die for his cause. He speaks to you as kin, revealing both contempt and a twisted sense of connection. You share a father, a bloodline, and a place in prophecy. The difference lies in how each of you has responded to that truth. Sarevok sees himself as the rightful heir to Bhaal's murderous mantle, the one strong enough to claim godhood through a trail of death. You, in contrast, have spent your journey saving cities and dismantling conspiracies rather than building them. The battle that follows is the culmination of everything you have learned. Sarevok fights with overwhelming strength, enhanced by his Bhaalspawn essence and his relentless training. His greatsword blows can fell the unprepared in a single strike. His presence can unnerve even seasoned warriors. Yet by now, you and your companions are not the naive travelers who left Candlekeep. You have fought your way through mines, forests, political intrigue, and magical threats. Every encounter has forged you into someone capable of standing on this ground and not flinching. When you finally defeat Sarevok, the moment carries more than just the relief of surviving a difficult battle. In terms of the Bhaalspawn mythos, his death has a metaphysical dimension. The lore of the saga indicates that when one Bhaalspawn kills another, the victor absorbs some portion of the fallen one's divine essence. This could explain the surge of power and disquiet that follows Sarevok's fall. You feel something change within you, as if a new weight has settled in your soul, bringing both strength and an unwelcome familiarity with the darkness it represents. The Temple of Bhaal begins to collapse around you, its structural and spiritual underpinnings shaken by the death of the would-be heir it sheltered. You flee with your companions as stone cracks and dust fills the air. When you emerge from the Undercity back into Baldur's Gate, you do so as the one who stopped a manufactured war, ended the Iron Crisis, and struck down a Bhaalspawn whose ambition might have plunged the region into lasting ruin. On the surface, the city begins to heal. Duke Elton slowly recovers with the help of clerical magic and antidotes. The remaining dukes clear your name and honor your role in exposing the Iron Throne and stopping Sarevok. The iron flows once more from Nashkel. The Cloakwood mine is destroyed. Bandit activity decreases as their leadership and funding are cut off. Baldur's Gate steps back from the brink of war with Am, and the immediate crisis passes. But your personal story cannot simply return to what it was. You now know that you are a Bhaalspawn, a child of the Lord of Murder. You have seen what that same heritage produced in Sarevok. You have felt divine essence join with your own when you killed him, and you have experienced dreams and surges of power that fit exactly what later accounts describe of Bhaalspawn across Faerun. Based on everything we know of the prophecy, this is only the first act in a much larger saga. The fall of Sarevok resolves one thread, but the prophecy still speaks of many children and of chaos sown in their wake. Emone stays with you, the thread connecting you back to Candlekeep and to the version of yourself that existed before gods and prophecies entered the picture. She remains, in this game, your closest friend rather than a confirmed fellow Bhaalspawn. Her growth alongside you, her resilience in the face of horror, and her quick shift from sheltered girl to capable adventurer, all make her feel like someone shaped by the same great currents, even if the first game does not yet reveal the full depth of her connection to your story. You stand at a crossroads. You can accept the city's gratitude, take what reward and rest is offered, and try to live as an ordinary hero in an extraordinary world. Or you can look ahead, aware that your nature will continue to draw danger, and that other Bhaalspawns still live, their paths destined to cross yours in ways that could be either tragic or transformative. Later chapters of the saga make it clear that the divine essence within you and your siblings will not simply fade with time. It moves, gathers, and pushes the world toward an eventual reckoning. For now, though, the story of your origin has reached its first natural pause. You have journeyed from Candlekeep's cloistered halls to the heart of Baldur's Gate, uncovered the truth behind the Iron Crisis, faced assassins and bandits, and corrupted merchants, and finally confronted your dark brother in a fallen temple of your shared father. You have seen what it means to be a Bhaalspawn when that heritage is embraced as an excuse for cruelty. You have also proven that the same blood can belong to someone who chooses to protect rather than destroy. If this quiet exploration of where Baldur's Gate first began for you brought you some calm and a deeper appreciation for the lore, it would mean a great deal if you liked this video and subscribed to the channel. There are many more origins, prophecies, and hidden histories waiting to be explored together in this relaxed, lore-focused way.